Welcome to Poirot Stories, where we dive into the timeless mysteries of Hercule Poirot, crafted in the style of the Queen of Crime herself, Agatha Christie. I'm your host, Preston Flint, and today, I'm thrilled to bring you a brand new original tale. Poison in the Arcades of Ribe, a Hercule Poirot murder mystery. Settle in with a cup of tea, or perhaps a tisane, as Poirot would prefer, and let the little gray cells awaken. This is a long one, perfect for a cozy evening, clocking in at over 90 minutes if you're listening along. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next adventure. Chapter 1: Introduction and Setup. The autumn of 1925 draped the ancient town of Ribe, Denmark's oldest settlement, in a mantle of crisp Nordic air and golden light. Its medieval arcades, those enigmatic, covered passageways lined with timber-framed houses, wove through the town like veins of history, their stone arches casting long, secretive shadows. The cobblestone streets, polished by centuries of footsteps, echoed with whispers of Viking sagas, Renaissance intrigues, and tales of merchants who once bartered under these very eaves. It was a place where time seemed to pause, where the past clung to every lintel and cornerstone, and it was here, far from his orderly London flat at Whitehaven Mansions, that Hercule Poirot found himself on an unexpected journey. The great Belgian detective, his mustache impeccably waxed, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the dampness of the Danish autumn, had arrived at the invitation of an old acquaintance, Baroness Ingrid von Klein. The Baroness, a wealthy widow of Danish-German descent, had penned a letter in her elegant looping script that piqued Poirot's curiosity. Monsieur Poirot, your reputation for unraveling the impossible precedes you. Join us in Ribe for a weekend of culture and camaraderie at my family's estate, Kleinhuis. The arcades hold more mysteries than you can imagine. And a Baroness's late husband, Baron Wilhelm von Klein, a shipping magnate with a passion for antiquities. This arcade, a long corridor of stone arches adorned with carved grotesques, was accessible only through a single heavy oak door from the manor's east wing. Its high walls and narrow slit windows admitted slivers of light, creating an atmosphere both intimate and foreboding. A perfect stage, Poirot mused, for secrets to unfold. The gathering was small, curated with the Baroness's discerning taste, each guest a thread in the intricate tapestry of motives Poirot would soon unravel. The hostess herself, Baroness Ingrid von Klein, was a woman of 55, her silver-streaked hair swept into an elegant chignon, her emerald green eyes sharp as the jeweled brooch pinned to her velvet gown. Her poise was regal, her voice a melodic blend of Danish lilt and German precision. Yet there was a hardness beneath her charm. She had inherited Wilhelm's fortune and expanded it through investments that, according to whispered rumors in Copenhagen's salons, were not always scrupulous. Was her wealth, or her ruthlessness, a magnet for enmity? Her nephew, Erik Larsen, cut a striking figure at 28. Tall and athletic, with a mop of sun-bleached blonde hair and a perpetual smirk that suggested both charm and arrogance, Erik was an aspiring archaeologist who had spent recent years excavating Viking sites across Scandinavia. His ambition was palpable. He dreamed of founding a museum to rival Copenhagen's, with his aunt's artifacts as the cornerstone. Yet, Poirot noted, Eric's eyes lingered on the Baroness with a mix of deference and defiance. Did he resent her control over the family legacy? Or was there a deeper grievance, perhaps tied to the inheritance he stood to gain? Dr. Helena Voss, a toxicologist in her early 40s, was a study in contrasts. Her wire-rimmed glasses and severe bun belied a fierce intellect, her clipped speech revealing a mind honed by years of scientific inquiry. Invited to authenticate the poisons within the Viking artifacts, Miss Clara Beaumont, a French art dealer in her mid-30s, whose elegance was as calculated as a Renaissance painting. Her raven hair gleamed under the gaslight, and her string of pearls seemed to glow with secrets. Clara had been negotiating to purchase several of the Baroness's artifacts, but clashed over valuations, her French accent sharpening in heated exchanges. Whispers in the manor hinted at a past scandal, an affair with the late Baron perhaps, or a professional slight that cut deeper than mere business. Her motives were opaque, but Poirot sensed a hidden fire beneath her polished exterior. The manor's staff completed the tableau. Jensen, the stoic butler with a face carved from granite, who had served the Von Kleins for decades, and Greta, the young maid, whose wide eyes betrayed awe at the gathered company. They were peripheral, Poirot thought, but no figure in a mystery is ever truly insignificant. That first evening, the group assembled in the manor's drawing room, a cavernous space adorned with tapestries and a roaring fire that cast flickering shadows. Dinner was a sumptuous affair: smoked herring from the North Sea, roasted venison with lingonberry sauce, and fine Bordeaux imported at no small expense. The conversation sparkled like the crystal glasses, weaving through topics of art, archaeology, and the Viking treasures to be unveiled the next day. The artifacts, housed in the private arcade, included a jeweled dagger said to have belonged to a Viking chieftain, a chalice rumored to have held poisoned mead, and a vial of ancient herbs, possibly hemlock, preserved in amber. Baroness Ingrid presided with the grace of a queen, though Poirot noted her sharp glances at Eric when he spoke too eagerly of his museum. Dr. Voss's comments on poison carried a dry edge, as if testing the room's reaction. Major Hargrove regaled them with war stories, his voice too loud, his glass refilled too often. Miss Beaumont deflected questions about her past with a smile that revealed nothing. And Poirot, ever the observer, sipped his wine and listened, his little gray cells cataloging every gesture, every word. As the meal ended, the scent of damp earth and the faint tang of the nearby Wadden Sea carried on a chill breeze that whispered through the ancient oaks surrounding the estate. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, had taken to strolling the grounds before breakfast, his polished shoes leaving faint impressions on the dew-kissed grass. His destination was the private arcade, that curious folly built by the late Baron Wilhelm von Klein, which had become the centerpiece of the weekend's festivities. The arcade, a long corridor of stone arches adorned with grotesque carvings, stood apart from the manor, accessible only through a single oak door, its high walls and narrow slit windows creating an air of seclusion that intrigued the detective. As he approached, Poirot noted the arcade's fortress-like design. No external entrances save the locked door, no low windows to admit intruders, only those high slits that permitted slivers of gray light to pierce the gloom within. The key, he knew, was kept by Baroness Ingrid von Klein, and the door was to remain locked until the unveiling ceremony at 10 o'clock. A perfect setting for a mystery, Poirot murmured, twirling his mustache. Or perhaps for a crime. He returned to the manor for breakfast, where the mood among the guests was a curious blend of anticipation and unease. The dining room, with its long mahogany table and crystal chandelier, buzzed with polite conversation, though Poirot's keen eyes caught the undercurrents. Eric Larson's forced smile as he discussed his museum plans, Dr. Helena Voss's clipped responses about Viking poisons, Major Reginald Hargrove's overly hearty laughter, and Miss Clara Beaumont's studied elegance as she sipped her coffee. Baroness Ingrid presided over the meal with her usual poise, her emerald necklace glinting as she spoke of the artifacts, a jeweled dagger, a chalice of legend, and a vial of ancient poison, housed in the arcade. At precisely 10, the group assembled at the arcade's entrance, a heavy oak door set into the manor's east wing. Baroness Ingrid, resplendent in a fur-trimmed gown of deep burgundy, held the iron key aloft like a scepter, said to have belonged to a Viking chieftain. Beside it, a silver chalice, etched with runes, gleamed ominously, its history tied to tales of poisoned mead. In a smaller case, a glass vial held dried herbs, possibly hemlock, preserved in amber, their potency a subject of fascination for Dr. Voss. Eric stepped forward, his eyes alight with ambition. Aunt Ingrid, this dagger alone could fund my entire expedition. Think of the museum we could build. Dr. Voss adjusted her glasses, peering at the vial. Fascinating. This poison, if it is hemlock, could kill in minutes, undetectable in wine or food. Her tone was clinical, but Poirot noted a spark of intensity in her gaze. Major Hargrove chuckled, a touch nervously. Reminds me of wartime tricks, chemicals and all that. Nasty business. Miss Beaumont ran a gloved finger along the chalice's rim. Exquisite craftsmanship. But the price, Baroness. You know my offer stands. Ingrid waved them off with an imperious gesture. Enough. Let us celebrate the past with a toast. She gestured to a side table where a crystal decanter of red wine, prepared earlier by the butler Jensen, stood alongside 5 matching glasses. A Bordeaux, from Wilhelm's favorite vintage, she said, pouring a measure into each glass. To history, and to secrets unveiled. The group raised their glasses, Poirot included, though he sipped sparingly, his eyes darting between faces. The wine was rich, its bouquet untainted, yet he sensed a tension in the air, as if the arcade itself held its breath. Suddenly a sharp gasp shattered the moment. Baroness Ingrid clutched her throat, her emerald eyes widening in horror. What? Poison! She rasped, her voice a strangled croak. Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the stone floor, and she staggered forward, knocking the chalice from its pedestal. It clattered to the ground, rolling into the shadows. Ingrid's knees buckled and she collapsed amid the artifacts, glass, the spilled wine pooling like blood. Mon Dieu, he murmured. She is dead, and yet we all drank from the same decanter. How then was the poison delivered? An impossible crime, no? After frantic shouts, Jensen's voice came from the other side of the door. Madame, what's happened? The bolt was external, he explained, but the internal lock required the key or a manual latch. With trembling hands, he unlocked the door from outside, revealing his ashen face as he took in the scene. Call the police, vite, Poirot commanded, rising to his full diminutive height. And no one touches anything. This arcade is now a scene of murder. The local police arrived swiftly, led by Inspector Olsen, a gruff Dane with a square jaw and a skepticism of foreigners. A poisoning here? He barked, surveying the group. And you, Belgian. Poirot, is it? I've heard of you. Assist if you must, but this is my jurisdiction. Olsen's men sealed the arcade, removing the body with care. Dr. Voss, at Poirot's request, examined the wine in the decanter. No residue, she reported, but I'd need a lab to confirm. The Baroness's glass, however, bore faint traces of a bitter residue, invisible to the untrained eye. Poirot paced the arcade, his mind a whirl of details. The locked door, bolted from within after entry. The shared wine, yet only one death. The missing emerald bead, the artifacts untouched. All had opportunity, he mused aloud. But the method, this is the work of a mind most cunning. Eric, still shaken, protested. We all drank the same wine. How could it target only her? Hargrove mopped his brow. Witchcraft, I say, or some trick from her own collection. Beaumont clutched her pearls, her voice trembling. This is madness. Who would do this? Dr. Voss remained silent, her eyes fixed on the vial of ancient poison, as if it held answers. Inspector Olsen, impatient, declared, We'll test everything. Why? Action to deliberation. His square jaw was set, his eyes narrowing at Poirot's fastidious appearance, patent leather shoes gleaming, mustache a perfect crescent. Poison in the wine, obviously, Olsen declared, tossing a preliminary report onto the table. We're testing the decanter, the glasses, everything. We'll have answers by tomorrow. Poirot, seated with his hands folded, shook his head gently. No, Inspector. It is not so simple. We all drank from the same decanter, yet only the Baroness perished. The poison, it was in her glass alone. How? The arcade was locked, bolted from within. This is no ordinary crime. His voice, soft and deliberate, carried the weight of certainty. Olsen grunted, unconvinced. Then one of them did it, he said, gesturing toward the Manor's drawing room, where the suspects, Eric Larson, Dr. Helena Voss, Major Reginald Hargrove, and Miss Clara Beaumont, awaited questioning. Motives clear enough. Money, revenge, or both. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Motives, oui. But the method. This is where the little gray cells must work. Let us begin. He started with interviews, summoning each suspect to the library, while Olsen loomed in the background, scribbling notes. First was Eric Larson, the Baroness's nephew, whose blonde hair was disheveled from pacing. He slumped into a chair, his usual smirk replaced by a haunted expression. I didn't do it, Monsieur Poirot, he said, unprompted. Why would I? Aunt Ingrid promised me the artifacts for my museum. Or at least, she did until she changed her mind last month. His voice cracked with frustration. She said I wasn't ready to handle the legacy. But murder? I'd inherit anyway, wouldn't I? Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. And yet, Monsieur Larson, your knowledge of archaeology, perhaps it extends to ancient poisons? The vial in the arcade, it fascinates you, no? Eric flushed. I've had here. Test my room if you doubt me. Her candor was convincing, yet Poirot sensed a guarded edge. Her knowledge was a double-edged sword, means aplenty, and a grudge to match. Major Reginald Hargrove entered next, his military bearing marred by a nervous twitch in his mustache. He mopped his brow with a handkerchief, his eyes darting to Olsen. I owed Ingrid money, I'll admit it, he said gruffly. £5,000 from a shipping venture that went belly up. She was pressing me to repay, threatening to seize my Copenhagen flat. But poison? That's not a soldier's way. I'd face her head-on, not skulk about with toxins. Poirot's eyebrows rose. And your wartime experience, Major? Chemicals, perhaps, were part of your repertoire? Hargrove bristled. Covert operations, yes, but nothing like this. Besides, I drank the wine too, same as you. His bluster hid something, Poirot thought. Fear, perhaps, or a secret more damning than debt. Miss Clara Beaumont was last, gliding into the library with the grace of a dancer. Her raven hair was pinned elegantly, her pearls a stark contrast to her pale complexion. "This is a nightmare," she said, her French accent soft but strained. "Ingrid and I argued over the artifact's value. She thought my offer too low, accused me of trying to swindle her. Years ago she even called me a forger, which was nonsense. But I was drinking the same wine, Monsieur Poirot. Why would I risk myself?" Poirot's eyes lingered on her pearls. "And yet, mademoiselle, a bead from a necklace, perhaps yours, was found near the body. Curious, no?" Clara's hand flew to her throat, touching the strand. "I lost one days ago before we arrived. Someone must have found it, placed it there." Her composure wavered, and Poirot noted it. Deception or genuine fear? He dismissed her and turned to the staff. Jensen, the butler, swore he had filled the decanter hours earlier. It was in her glass alone, the chemist said, puzzled. But how? Poirot knelt by the spot where Ingrid had fallen, his gloved fingers brushing the stone floor. He found a faint footprint in the dust, too small for the men, Greta's perhaps, or Clara's. And there, glinting in a corner, was the missing emerald bead from Ingrid's necklace, its surface oddly tacky. He bagged it carefully, his mind racing. He recreated the scene in his head. Ingrid pouring the wine, handing out glasses, the toast, her collapse. The group had stood close, their movements a blur of hands and glasses. Had someone tampered with her glass before the toast? Or was the poison elsewhere, on her fingers, her lips? As evening descended, the manner grew tense. The suspects dined separately, their eyes darting with suspicion. Olsen, frustrated, muttered about arresting Eric for motive. Inheritance, plain as day. Poirot shook his head. No, Inspector. The locked arcade, the single glass. This is a puzzle of precision. We must look beyond the obvious. He retired to the library, staring at the fire. The footprint, the bead, the poison's specificity, all pointed to a mind that planned with care. The arcades of Ribe, he murmured. They guard their secrets well, but not from Hercule Poirot. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The second day at Kleinhuis dawned with a pale sun struggling to pierce the fog that enveloped Ribe, casting the estate in a dreamlike haze. The private arcade, where Baroness Ingrid von Klein had met her poisoned end, remained sealed under Inspector Olsen's orders, its stone arches guarding secrets as stubbornly as the Danish winter. Hercule Poirot, his morning tisane steaming beside him in the manor's library, pored over his notes with the precision of a watchmaker. The fire crackled, casting shadows across the oak table where a map of the arcade lay, alongside sketches of the crime scene. The shattered wine glass, the fallen chalice, the Emma weeks before her death. It named Erik Larson as primary heir to the estate and artifacts, but a codicil, in Ingrid's sharp hand, stipulated that Erik would be disinherited if he married without her approval. Poirot's mustache twitched. A motive, perhaps, for Monsieur Erik. But is it too obvious? He questioned Erik in the study, the young man's blonde hair falling into his eyes as he fidgeted. Yes, I knew about the will, Erik admitted, his voice tight. Aunt Ingrid disapproved of my fiancée, Anna, a historian from Oslo. She called her beneath the family. But I wasn't going to marry in secret. Why risk it all? Besides, I was in town yesterday morning, meeting a curator. Checked the hotel logs. Poirot noted the alibi, but alibis could be forged. The will was a clue, or a red herring planted to incriminate. Next, Poirot searched Dr. Helena Voss's guest room, with Olsen's grudging permission. Beneath a stack of scientific journals, he found a leather-bound notebook detailing hemlock synthesis, complete with chemical formulas. One page, however, was missing, its jagged edge betraying hasty removal. Confronted, Helena's composure held firm. "Research notes," she said coolly. "I study toxins, Monsieur Poirot, not use them. That missing page? Likely torn out accidentally during my travels." Her explanation was plausible, yet the missing page gnawed at Poirot. Means and motive. Her feud with Ingrid over funding was well documented, but opportunity in a locked room. He pressed further. "And your movements yesterday morning, madame?" "I was in the library. Reading," she replied. "Greta can confirm. She brought me coffee." Another clue, or another distraction? Major Reginald Hargrove's room yielded a different find. A bundle of IOUs tucked inside a cigar box, each signed to Ingrid for sums totaling £5,000. When questioned, Hargrove's face reddened. "Old debts, nothing more," he mirrored to Klein Huss's folly. The cobblestone paths were slick with mist, and the air carried whispers of the town's Viking past. A local historian, an elderly man with a weathered face, approached him near the cathedral. "Those artifacts at Kleinhaus," he said. "Some say they're cursed. Viking poisons were often hidden in jewelry or weapons. Clever, deadly." The remark sparked a thought. Back at the manor, Poirot re-examined the crime scene, now accessible with Olsen's key. The emerald bead, bagged as evidence, bore a faint tackiness. Residue, perhaps? He requested a rush analysis, suspecting it might hold traces of the poison. Another clue emerged. Greta the maid confessed to overhearing a heated argument between Ingrid and Erik the night before the murder. "They were in the drawing room," she whispered, twisting her apron. "The Baroness said something about betrayal and the family name." Master Erik stormed out, but a check of Erik's alibi, confirmed by a hotel clerk's timestamp, placed him in town during the argument. A false lead, or a cleverly staged absence? The decanter, retested, remained clean, but the chemist confirmed the poison in Ingrid's glass was applied to the rim, not mixed in the wine. How? Poirot recreated the toast in his mind. Ingrid poured last, her glass distinct only by its position in her hand. Had someone coated the rim beforehand? The arcade side table where the decanter stood was accessible before the group entered, but Jensen swore he'd locked it after preparation. A false clue surfaced. A letter in Ingrid's desk, in Hargrove's scrawl threatening consequences if she foreclosed on his debts. Confronted, Hargrove admitted writing it weeks ago. "A bluff, nothing more. I was angry, but murder? Preposterous." Eric, meanwhile, produced a telegram from a Copenhagen museum, confirming funding for his project. "See? I didn't need Aunt Ingrid's money," he said, thrusting it at Poirot. But the telegram's date was recent. Too convenient? Dr. Voss offered a demonstration at Poirot's request of Hemlock's effects. Clara's initials. "Planted," Clara cried, while Helena scoffed. "Absurd. I'd never touch her things." A frame or a careless mistake? As night fell, Poirot retired to the library, the clues swirling in his mind. The will, the notebook, the IOUs, the pearl, the glove, the bead. Red herrings abounded, each suspect a master of misdirection. "The killer," he murmured. "He's clever, but not cleverer than Poirot." Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The third day at Klein House broke under a sky bruised with storm clouds. The Ribe countryside lashed by gusts that rattled the manor's ancient windows. The private arcade, where Baroness Ingrid von Klein had succumbed to poison, stood silent under police guard, its stone arches a mute testament to an impossible crime. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in the manor's library, sipped his morning tisane, his notes spread before him like a chessboard mid-game. The clues, the emerald bead, the poisoned glass rim, the missing notebook page, the planted glove, formed a puzzle of maddening complexity. Yet, as the wind howled outside, Poirot sensed the investigation was about to twist, like the Ribe River carving new paths through the marshlands. Inspector Olsen, his patience fraying, stormed into the library, his coat damp from the gathering storm. "We've arrested Erik Larsen," he declared, slapping a warrant on the table. "The will gives him motive, and Greta saw him near the arcade before the murder. Case closed." Poirot's mustache quivered with disapproval. "No, Inspector. This is premature. The locked arcade defies your simple solution. Release Monsieur Eric. We must dig deeper." His voice, calm but firm, carried the weight of his little gray cells at work. Reluctantly, Olsen complied, but the arrest had stirred the manor's already tense atmosphere. The suspects, Eric, Dr. Helena Voss, Major Reginald Hargrove, and Miss Clara Beaumont, moved like ghosts through Klein House, their glances sharp with suspicion. Curare, yes, but it's not easily synthesized without a lab. Search my belongings. I've nothing to hide. Her confidence was unshaken, yet Poirot noted a flicker of unease when he mentioned the missing notebook page. A clue or a distraction? Major Hargrove, meanwhile, complicated matters further. He vanished for hours, only to be found in Ribe town, wiring money to an unknown account. Confronted by Poirot in the manor's billiard room, he blustered, "Paying a debt to a friend in Copenhagen, nothing to do with Ingrid." His hands shook, betraying nerves. Was he settling debts to cover his tracks, or building an alibi after the fact? Poirot requested Olsen trace the wire, suspecting a deeper motive. Miss Clara Beaumont dropped a bombshell during her interview in the drawing room. Twisting her pearls, she confessed, "Eric and we're in love. We planned to elope, but Ingrid found out and threatened to cut him off. That codicil in her will? It was about me." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were defiant. "I'd never kill for money, Monsieur Poirot, but Eric was desperate to protect our future." Eric, summoned to confirm, nodded grimly. "It's true. Aunt Ingrid called Clara a fortune hunter. But we didn't act. Why risk everything?" The revelation thickened the motive for Eric, yet his alibi from the hotel clerk held. Poirot wondered, was the affair a motive, or a cleverly planted red herring? A false clue unraveled. The faint footprint in the arcade, initially thought to be Clara's or Greta's, matched the maid's shoes. Greta, tearful, admitted to cleaning the arcade floor days prior, leaving the mark innocently. "I didn't know it would matter," she sobbed. Poirot dismissed her gently, crossing off one lead but noting her nervousness. Fear of the killer, perhaps? He returned to the arcade, braving the storm to re-examine the scene. The high slit windows, tested again, were impregnable, ruling out external delivery like a poisoned dart. But a new discovery emerged. The sill for it. This bolstered Voss's motive, but her calm demeanor suggested control. Too much control? Major Hargrove, cornered again, confessed to wartime experience with poisons. "Chemical warfare, yes," he admitted, his voice low. "But that was against enemies, not friends. Ingrid was a friend. Until the deaths." His candor was disarming, but Poirot noted a bead of sweat on his brow. Truth or a performance? Clara's missing pearl took a new turn when a second bead, identical to the one near Ingrid's body, was found in Hargrove's coat pocket during a police search. "Planted!" Hargrove roared. "I've never touched her jewelry." Clara, equally indignant, accused Voss of framing her. The glove in Voss's room, embroidered with Clara's initials, added to the confusion. Was someone sowing discord among the suspects? As the storm intensified, flooding the Ribe River and isolating Kleinhuis, tensions reached a breaking point. At dinner, Voss accused Clara of stealing artifacts, while Eric snapped at Hargrove for his shady dealings. The air crackled with mistrust, and Poirot, observing silently, sensed the killer's desperation growing. A final twist came that night. Poirot, retiring to his room, detected a bitter scent in his tisane. Pouring it into a vial for testing, he confirmed traces of the same alkaloid that killed Ingrid. "Mon Dieu!" he exclaimed. "The killer strikes again, but Poirot is not so easily dispatched." The attempt on his life suggested the murderer was among them, panicked by his probing. He gathered the suspects in the drawing room, his voice grave. "Someone here fears the truth. The arcades of Ribe hide a cunning mind, but it shall not escape me." Eyes darted, Eric's to Clara, Voss's to Hargrove, Hargrove's to the floor. The motives intertwined like the arches of the arcade. Inheritance, revenge, debt, love, betrayal. Poirot returned to the library, the storm's howl a fitting chorus to his thoughts. The chalice's compartment, the poisoned bead that wove a tapestry of greed, revenge, and desperation. The attempt on his own life the previous night. Tainted tisane laced with the same alkaloid that killed Ingrid had sharpened his resolve. "The killer grows reckless," he murmured, twirling his mustache. "But recklessness betrays the cunning." Tonight he would unveil the truth. Poirot summoned the suspects to the manor's grand hall, a cavernous space where portraits of Von Klein ancestors glowered from the walls. The candlelight cast long shadows, mirroring the arcade's arches, as Eric, Helena, Reginald and Clara took their seats, their faces a gallery of fear, defiance, and suspicion. Inspector Olson stood by the door, arms crossed, his skepticism of Poirot's methods tempered by curiosity. Jensen and Greta, the staff, hovered at the edges, their presence requested to ensure no detail was overlooked. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice slow and deliberate. "The time has come to unveil the poison in the arcades of Ribe. This is an impossible crime. A locked room, a shared decanter. Yet only the Baroness dies. How? The little gray cells, they have worked tirelessly. And now, they speak." He paced before the group, his eyes darting from face to face. "Let us recap. The poison, a rare South American alkaloid, not Viking hemlock, was on the rim of Madame Ingrid's glass, not in the wine. The decanter was clean, the other glasses untouched. The arcade was bolted from within, the key in her hand. No one entered, no one left. An impossible murder, no?" Eric shifted uncomfortably. "But we all drank. It makes no sense." Poirot raised a finger. "Patience, Monsieur Eric. The sense, it emerges. Consider the emerald bead, found near the body, tacky with residue. Was it the vehicle of death? And the chalice, with its hidden compartment, empty, but suggestive. The glove in Madame Voss's room, the pearl in Major Hargrove's pocket. All there." Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice grew firmer. "Let us consider the emerald bead. Tests confirm it bore traces of the alkaloid applied as a coating. The Baroness, she fidgeted with her necklace. A habit, no? Touching the beads, then her lips. The killer coated one bead, knowing it would transfer poison during the toast." Gasps rippled through the room. Hargrove blustered, "Preposterous! How could anyone predict that?" Poirot turned to him. "Predict, Major? Or plan? Let us examine the suspects. Monsieur Eric, your inheritance was at stake, threatened by the codicil. But your alibi holds, and murder risks all. Madame Voss, your expertise in toxins and your grudge against Ingrid are compelling. Yet your calm suggests innocence or calculation. Mademoiselle Clara, your affair with Eric and Ingrid's threats give motive, but the pearl in the arcade, too obvious a frame." He paused, facing Hargrove. "And you, Major, debts of £5,000, a wartime past with chemicals, and a letter threatening consequences. But there is more. Ingrid blackmailed you, not just for money, but for a secret from the war." Hargrove's face drained of color. "What are you implying?" Poirot's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Desertion, Major. Letters in Ingrid's study, hidden in a locked drawer, revealed you fled a post during the Great War, saved only by Baron Wilhelm's intervention. Ingrid used this to bind you, threatening exposure. You could not pay, so you acted." The room fell silent, the storm's roar the only sound. Poirot continued, "You stole a page from Madame Voss's notebook, synthesizing the alkaloid in Copenhagen before arriving. You coated an emerald bead from Ingrid's necklace, taken during a visit to her room under pretense of discussing debts. In the arcade, you bumped to with relief. Poirot addressed them all. The arcades of Ribe, they conceal, but they also reveal. The truth, it is like the storm outside, fierce, but cleansing. As Hargrove was led away, Poirot lingered, his gaze on the candlelit portraits. The puzzle was solved, but the human cost weighed heavily. The little gray cells, he murmured. They triumph. But the heart, it mourns. Chapter 7. Justice Served. The storm that had raged over Kleinhuis for days began to relent on the fifth morning, its fierce winds softening to a mournful sigh, as if the Ribe countryside itself exhaled in relief. The private arcade, where Baroness Ingrid von Klein had fallen victim to a cunning poison, stood silent under the pale dawn. Its stone arches no longer a stage for mystery, but a monument to a tragedy resolved. Hercule Poirot, standing at the window of the manor's library, gazed out at the mist-draped grounds, his tisane cooling untouched on the oak table. The revelation of Major Reginald Hargrove as the murderer had lifted the pall of fear from Kleinhuis, yet the weight of human frailty lingered in Poirot's mind. Justice, he knew, was not merely the cuffing of a criminal, but the restoration of order to a world disrupted. Inspector Olsen, his gruff demeanor softened by grudging respect, joined Poirot in the library, his boots still muddy from overseeing Hargrove's transfer to Ribe's police station. "Well, Monsieur Poirot," he said, folding his arms, "you've done it. Hargrove's confessed fully, spilled everything in the cell last night. Said he couldn't live with the shame of Ingrid exposing his desertion. You Belgians have a knack for this, I'll give you that." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "The little gray cells, Inspector. They require only logic and observation. But I thank you for your cooperation." His tone was polite, but his eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a puzzle solved. The manor, once a cauldron of suspicion, began to settle. The suspects, now cleared, gathered in the drawing room, their faces.
Thank you enough. Aunt Ingrid was difficult, but she didn't deserve this. What happens now? The estate, the artifacts, it's all mine, but it feels heavy. Poirot nodded. The weight of inheritance, Monsieur Eric, is indeed a burden. But you are young, and with Mademoiselle Clara at your side, you may yet honor your aunt's legacy. The will, it is clear, without the codicil's threat, you are free to marry and to manage Kleinhuis as you see fit. Clara squeezed Eric's hand, her pearls catching the morning light. "We'll do right by her," she said softly. "No more secrets. The artifacts will go to Eric's museum, as he dreamed." Dr. Voss set down her cup, her expression thoughtful. "I misjudged Ingrid, perhaps," she admitted. "Her forgeries hurt my work, but I see now she was protecting her family's name. I'll return to my research, maybe even study those Viking poisons properly, with Eric's permission." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "A noble pursuit, Madame Voss. Knowledge, it redeems even the darkest motives." The conversation turned to Hargrove's fate. Olsen, lingering by the door, shared details from the confession. "He planned it for weeks," the inspector said. "Stole a page from Voss's notebook during a Copenhagen lecture, synthesized the alkaloid in a makeshift lab. Got the emerald bead from Ingrid's room during a supposed debt discussion. Knew she'd touch it to her lips, her nervous habit. Clever, but not clever enough." Poirot elaborated, his voice slow and deliberate for the listeners. The major, he was trapped by his past, the desertion during the war, concealed by Baron Wilhelm, was a wound that never healed. Madame Ingrid's blackmail,
It was not only about money, but about honor. When she threatened to expose him, he saw no escape but murder. The arcade's luck. It was a distraction. The poison acted slowly, applied before the bolt was drawn. In that moment of chaos as we entered, Greta, serving tea, shivered. "It's awful, sir. To think he was among us." Poison. All were to be catalogued for Eric's museum, their secrets no longer deadly. The emerald bead, the key to the crime, was locked away as evidence, its tacky residue a silent witness to Hargrove's guilt. By afternoon, Poirot prepared to depart. His bags packed, he stood at the manor's entrance, where the Ribe River glimmered under a clearing sky. Clara approached, her elegance restored. "Monsieur Poirot, you've given us a future. How can we repay you?" Poirot smiled, adjusting his hat. "Mademoiselle, live well, and keep the arcades free of poison. That is payment enough." Dr. Voss offered a handshake, her grip firm. "I'll send you my next paper on toxins, monsieur, for your gray cells." Eric, clutching the letter, managed a nod. "Kleinhuis will be a place of history, not secrets. I promise." Inspector Olson, waiting by the police car, tipped his hat. "You're a nuisance, Poirot, but a damned good one. Safe travels." Poirot boarded the car to Ribe Station, the manor receding behind him. As the train carried him toward Copenhagen, then London, he sipped a fresh tisane, reflecting on the case. "The arcades of Ribe," he murmured. "They are beautiful, but they remind us. The human heart. It is the true labyrinth." Chapter 8. Epilogue. The winter of 1926 descended gently upon London, its streets cloaked in a soft frost that sparkled under the gas lamps of Whitehaven mansions. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in his meticulously ordered flat, sat by the fire, a steaming cup of tisane in hand. The case of the poison in the arcades of Ribe had faded from the headlines of Copenhagen's newspapers, but its echoes lingered in his mind, as all great puzzles did. The private arcade at Kleinhuis, with its stone arches and Viking treasures, had been both stage and witness to a crime of calculated betrayal. Now, months later, the final threads of the mystery were about to be woven and opened last month in Aunt Ingrid's name. Clara and I married quietly in Copenhagen, and she's taken charge of the museum's exhibitions. We've dedicated a wing to Ingrid, not as a saint, but as a woman who loved history, however flawed her methods. Poirot's mustache twitched with approval. The young man's ambition, once a source of tension, had matured into purpose. The letter continued, describing how Dr. Helena Voss had joined the museum's advisory board, her expertise in toxicology lending authenticity to the Viking poison displays. "Helena's forgiven Aunt Ingrid's past slights," Eric noted. "She's even published a paper on the alkaloid used in the murder, crediting your insight into its South American origins. She sends her regards and a promise to visit London for your thoughts on her next project." The mention of Voss brought a faint smile to Poirot's lips. Her intellectual rigor, once a shadow of suspicion, had proven her innocence and now enriched the world. He recalled her steady gaze in the grand hall when he'd unveiled Hargrove as the killer, her relief palpable yet restrained. The letter also mentioned Jensen and Greta, who remained at Kleinhuis, tending the estate with a quiet pride. "Greta's training to be a curator," Eric added, "and Jensen insists on polishing the arcade's lamps daily, as if guarding against further secrets." Poirot set the letter down, his thoughts drifting to Major Reginald Hargrove, now imprisoned in Copenhagen. The man's confession, wrung from a broken spirit, had laid bare a soul tormented by shame. Desertion during the Great War, concealed by Baron Wilhelm's loyalty, had been Hargrove's secret wound, festering under Ingrid's blackmail. The emerald bead, coated with a stolen alkaloid, had been his weapon, its poison activated by Ingrid's nervous habit of touching her necklace to her lips. The locked arcade, Poirot mused, had been a clever misdirection, the bolt irrelevant when the poison was administered in a fleeting moment of chaos. Hargrove's trial had been swift, his sentence just. Yet Poirot felt no triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of order restored. He rose, pacing the room, his patent leather shoes silent on the Persian rug. The case had been a masterpiece of deception,
where greed, fear, and honor collided. He thought of Ingrid, a woman of fierce ambition whose forgeries and ruthlessness had sown the seeds of her demise. Her letter to Eric, found in her study, had revealed a softer side, a pride in her nephew that she'd hidden behind stern control. She loved fiercely, Poirot murmured, but in shadows. The Ribe case had left its mark, not just on Kleinhaus, but on Poirot himself. Each mystery he knew was a mirror to the soul, reflecting the delicate balance of justice and mercy. He returned to his desk, tucking Eric's letter into a leather-bound journal where he chronicled his cases. The journal, a repository of triumphs and tragedies, grew heavier with each entry, yet it grounded him, a reminder of why he pursued truth with such relentless precision. As evening fell, Poirot prepared for a quiet dinner, his flat a haven of order amid the chaos of the world. He adjusted his cravat, his reflection in the mirror showing a man unchanged yet ever-evolving. The arcades of Ribe, with their medieval arches and whispered secrets, had tested his intellect and affirmed his purpose. "The little gray cells," he said aloud, "they do not rest, for there are always more puzzles to solve." Chapter 9. Shadows of Truth. The winter of 1926 had settled over London with a quiet frost, its chill seeping through the cracks of even the sturdiest homes. Yet Hercule Poirot's flat at Whitehaven Mansions remained a bastion of warmth and order. The Belgian detective sat by his fireplace, the glow casting soft shadows across his polished mahogany desk, where a small stack of letters awaited his attention. Among them was a second missive from Ribe, Denmark, arrived just that morning, its envelope bearing the now familiar crest of Kleinhaus. The case of poison in the arcades of Ribe, though resolved, continued to ripple through the lives of those touched by Baroness Ingrid von Klein's murder, preserve her family's legacy, yet tormented by guilt over her methods. She admitted to forging provenances, Clara wrote, not for profit, but to elevate Kleinhaus's status among Denmark's elite. She feared Eric's ambitions would expose her, yet she loved him fiercely, as you saw in her letter to him. The diary also hinted at Ingrid's complex relationship with Major Reginald Hargrove. During the Great War, Baron Wilhelm had shielded Hargrove from court-martial after his desertion, a debt Ingrid later used to secure loans for his failed ventures. She felt betrayed by his ingratitude, Clara noted, but never wished him harm. Her blackmail was a desperate attempt to control a spiraling situation. Poirot nodded, the pieces aligning with his own deductions. Hargrove's shame, fueled by Ingrid's pressure, had driven him to coat an emerald bead with a stolen alkaloid,
exploiting her nervous habit of touching her necklace to her lips. Clara's letter continued with news of Dr. Helena Voss, whose work with the museum had taken a surprising turn. Helena uncovered a Viking-era poison recipe in the artifact's documentation. Clara wrote, a blend of herbs mimicking the alkaloid's effects. She believes Ingrid may have studied it, perhaps unknowingly inspiring Hargrove's method. Helena's presenting her findings in Copenhagen next month and asks if you'd attend as her guest. Poirot's eyes gleamed at the prospect. Knowledge, even of poisons, was a worthy pursuit. Eric, Clara added, had transformed Kleinhuis into a cultural hub, hosting scholars and tourists drawn to the arcade's history. The jeweled dagger, the chalice with its hidden compartment, and the vial of ancient herbs were now displayed with plaques crediting Poirot's role in solving the murder. Eric insists on naming a gallery after you, Clara wrote, though I suspect you'll decline the honor with your usual humility. Poirot chuckled softly, setting the letter down. The idea of a gallery in his name was flattering, but he preferred the quiet triumph of a case closed. He rose, pacing his flat, his patent leather shoes silent on the Persian rug. The Ribe killer's desperation. Poirot's thoughts turned to Ingrid herself, a woman of contradictions. Her diary, as Clara described, painted a portrait of pride and regret. A collector who bent truth to build a legacy. Her letter to Eric found in her study had revealed her love, hidden behind a stern facade. She was no saint, Poirot murmured, but she was human, and that is enough. He glanced at his journal, where the Ribe case was chronicled in precise detail. The crime scene, the clues, the motives. Hargrove's trial, Clara's letter confirmed, had concluded with a life sentence, his confession sparing him harsher punishment. The manor staff, Jensen and Greta, had found stability, with Greta's curatorial training a testament to Eric's generosity. The arcades of Ribe, once a stage for betrayal, now stood as a symbol of renewal. Poirot stepped to the window, the London frost glinting under streetlights. The case had reaffirmed his belief in order over chaos, in the power of reason to pierce the shadows of deceit. Yet it also reminded him of the cost, the lives altered, the trust broken. He thought of Clara and Eric, their love a beacon in the aftermath, and of Helena, whose intellect would carry the Viking legacy forward. As night deepened, Poirot lit a fresh candle, its flame steady against the cold. He penned a reply to Clara, declining the gallery, but accepting Helena's invitation to Copenhagen. The arcades of Ribe, he wrote, have taught me that truth, like a Viking relic, is both fragile and enduring. I look forward to seeing your museum's light. He sealed the letter, his signature a flourish of finality. Chapter 10. The Light of Legacy. The spring of 1926 bloomed over London with a tentative warmth, the city's streets alive with the soft green of budding trees and the chatter of passers-by under a sky washed clean by April rains. At Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot's flat remained a sanctuary of order, its polished surfaces reflecting the you to Ribe for the museum's spring gala, to see the legacy you helped preserve. As Poirot read, the events of that stormy autumn in 1925 unfolded in his memory. The private arcade, with its medieval arches and Viking treasures, had been a stage for deception. The jeweled dagger, the chalice with its hidden compartment, the vial of ancient herbs. Ingrid's death, by a South American alkaloid coated on an emerald bead had been a crime of precision, exploiting her nervous habit of touching her necklace to her lips. Hargrove's motive, shame over a wartime desertion, compounded by Ingrid's blackmail, had driven him to steal a formula from Dr. Helena Voss's notebook, crafting a poison that struck in the locked arcade. The letter detailed a new discovery, a hidden panel in the arcade's stonework, found during renovations for the museum. Inside, Eric's team uncovered a cache of letters from Baron Wilhelm, Ingrid's late husband, to Ingrid, written during the Great War. They reveal his love for her, Eric wrote, and his decision to protect Hargrove, not out of friendship, but to spare Ingrid the scandal of a family friend's disgrace. She carried that burden, using it to control Hargrove, never imagining it would lead to her death. Poirot's eyes softened. The letters painted Ingrid as a woman caught between duty and desperation, her forgeries of artifact provenances a misguided attempt to secure Kleinhaus's legacy. Her love for Eric, hidden behind stern control, had been evident in the letter Poirot found in her study, urging him to honor the family name. She was flawed, Poirot murmured, but her heart, it sought greatness. Eric's letter continued with updates on the suspects, now free of suspicion. Clara, now his wife, had curated a stunning exhibit on Viking craftsmanship, the chalice's hidden compartment a centerpiece that drew scholars from across Europe. Clara's brilliance shines, Eric wrote. She's made the arcade a place of wonder, not fear. Dr. Helena Voss, her reputation restored, had published a groundbreaking study on Viking-era Poise Grand Hall, under the flickering candlelight of that stormy night, laying bare a soul crushed by shame. The planted clues, the glove in Voss's room, the pearl in his pocket, had been desperate attempts to deflect suspicion. But the emerald bead, tacky with alkaloid, had betrayed him. The attempt on Poirot's life, a poison tisane detected by his keen senses, had sealed Hargrove's fate, proving his panic as the net tightened. Poirot rose, pacing his flat, the rhythm of his steps a counterpoint to his racing thoughts. The Ribe case had been a masterclass in deception. The locked arcade a red herring, the poison applied before the bolt was drawn, in the chaos of entry. The motives, inheritance for Eric, revenge for Voss, debt for Hargrove, love for Clara, had intertwined like the arches of Ribe's historic passages. Yet it was Ingrid's own actions, her blackmail and forgeries, that had sown the seeds of her demise. He paused by the window, London's spring light softening the frost of memory. The case had reaffirmed his faith in reason, in the power of the little gray cells to pierce the fog of human folly. Yet it also reminded him of the cost. A life lost, a family fractured, a trust betrayed. He thought of Eric and Clara, their love a bridge to a brighter future, and of Voss, whose intellect now illuminated history rather than suspicion. The letter concluded with an invitation to the gala, where a small plaque would honor Poirot's role in solving the murder. "We won't name a gallery after you," Eric wrote, "knowing your humility. But a quiet tribute feels right." Poirot smiled, his decision already made. He penned a reply, accepting the invitation with a promise to bring his most discerning eye to the museum's exhibits. "The arcades of Ribe," he wrote, "have taught me that truth, like a Viking treasure, endures through time. I look forward to seeing your legacy shine." He sealed the letter, his signature a flourish of finality, and placed it with his journal, where the Ribe case was